The fourth International Conference on Positive Aging, hosted by the Institute for Social Innovation at Fielding Graduate University, was held recently in Los Angeles at the California Endowment Center for Nonprofit Management. The goal of the conference planners was to explore the ways in which the themes of wellness, community, life transitions, and creativity contribute to positive aging, which involves taking control of one's life, being active in the community, engaging with others, building close relationships, and seeking meaning and purpose. The keynote speaker at the conference was Marc Freedman, founder and CEO of Civic Ventures, a think tank and R&D organization helping society achieve the greatest return on experience through transforming work. Charles McClintock, Dean of the School of Human and Organizational Development at Fielding Graduate University, introduced him at the conference.
Marc Freedman is the founder and CEO of Civic Ventures, a think tank and R&D organization helping society achieve the greatest return on experience. What a great concept, return on experience. He spearheaded creation of Encore, which is now America's largest nonprofit national service program engaging those in the second half of life, as well as the very well-known Purpose Prize, which annually provides 5 $100,000 prizes and 5 $50,000 prizes to social entrepreneurs in the second half of life. Friedman was described by the New York Times as, quote, the voice of aging baby boomers who are eschewing retirement. I don't know about that phrase. Are we eschewing retirement? There must be a more poetic way to put it. For meaningful and sustaining work later in life. And then he also has the double honor of being praised in the Wall Street Journal, something no politician has ever achieved, both publications. In the past decade, Mr. Freedman has emerged as a leading voice in discussions nationwide about the changing face of retirement. He's just finished a new book, The Big Shift, Navigating the New Stage Between Midlife and Old Age. It will be out in April, am I right, 2011? Marc is one of the pioneers. We like to think that Fielding is one of the pioneers, and so we are very honored, and would you join me in welcoming Marc Freedman.
Thanks, Charles. Thanks to Katrina. It's intimidating prospect talking to a group with so many friends and so many mentors, including the inimitable Jan Hively. The first time I heard about Shift from Jan and went to visit it, I just thought that was the perfect word to describe what's happening all around the country. And then when I got to writing this book, I thought, okay, the title will be Shift. And then at some point, I think the publisher decided, no, it's the big shift. So I just want to tell you, this is the big shift. That's just shift. She said she was joking before, she's going to have to write to little shift. They apparently have T-shirts that say shift happens. I'm not sure that that's going to be the right marketing campaign for this project, but I do have to take Fielding to task. I mean, it is near insanity to give Jan a Lifetime Achievement Award, right? I mean, talk about tempting fate. That's just, basically that's just a challenge for the next round. And it reminds me of another mentor, John Gardner, who got his Lifetime Achievement Award, the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1964. He was in his 50s at that time, and being in your 50s in 1964 was pretty much a capstone moment. And now when I think back at what John, it's hard to remember anything he did before his Lifetime Achievement Award. He was HEW Secretary, implemented the Older Americans Act, created the White House Fellows Program, Common Cause, Independent Sector. He's the person who really had the idea for Experience Corps. He once, when I first met him, he took me into his office and he pulled out this 3-page concept paper on the Experience Corps, which he had written when he was HEW Secretary, because he felt that the first step was through expanding Social Security, implementing Medicare. When he was in the midst of the Medicare battles, he had a wonderful line. He said, America today faces breathtaking opportunities disguised as unsolvable problems. He said that in 1965. And he thought, okay, we shore up the economic security, independence, well-being of older adults, and then you have, the greatest force for good that humanity's ever encountered. And he wrote this concept here, put in this file, and there were hundreds of these papers in this file. I don't know, how the estate was resolved, but whoever got that file cabinet basically is going to, lead social innovation for the next 100 years. You just, getting through the D's would be enough to, bring sweetness and light to every corner of the earth. So it's an honor to follow Jan and to steal the name of her organization for the title of the book. I promise you can get 10% of all 11 copies that are sold. But I know we're assembled here because this is a positive aging conference, and yesterday I had to go to Washington. I was coming back, and the plane that I was going to fly back here had a flat tire. That's the first time I've ever had a plane has a flat tire. And then they decided to jack the plane up. I don't know if they call AAA. It's like 4 A's for the airline version. But they decided it's too windy to jack the plane up, so we have to get off and go to another plane. So there's another wait, and I decided to go to one of those airport bookstores in Dulles, and it was a depressing experience. So the first thing I start looking through the books section, and there it is, front and center, new book, Shock of Gray, with the subtitle of How the Aging of the World's Population Pits Young Against Old, Child Against Parent, Worker Against Boss, Company Against Rival, and Nation Against Nation. I was waiting, I opened it up to see if it, Mother Against Apple Pie. It was, so okay, no books for this flight. I think I'll get a magazine. And there it is, the estimable foreign policy with their cover story, this issue, Old World. Let me tell you, if you're thinking of ending it all, read about half of this article and it'll get you there. It has uplifting titles like The World Faces a Population Bomb, The West is Doomed by Demographics. Then there's the skeptical part, The Elderly World Will Be More Peaceful. A gray world will be a poorer world. I think I'll take Nation Against Nation. So somewhere in a much bigger hall than the one we're assembled in today is a not-so-positive aging conference. They got more money, they got more magazines, and they're going to sell a lot more books than probably any of us here, have managed to do in our own writing. But we're here, so we can talk about the upbeat side. And there was another development yesterday. Those of you who read the Times Opinionator section online, there's a beautiful piece by David Bornstein, the author of How to Change the World, a preeminent expert on social entrepreneurship, about a woman named Inez Killingsworth in Cleveland who started Empowering and Strengthening Ohio's People, a nonprofit advocacy organization. And she's 72. She's a former janitor from the Cleveland Public Schools. And she basically got started in community organizing because her kids were getting chased home by stray dogs in her neighborhood in Cleveland, and she started organizing neighbors, and that experience as a change maker through this campaign against stray dogs just kept taking her further and further into looking at the issues that were facing her community, and ultimately she ended up focusing on foreclosures. And in the past year, actually in 2009, ESOP, Empowering and Strengthening Ohio's People, saved 9,000 people in Ohio from being foreclosed. And she was one of the Purpose Prize winners this year, and really part of a remarkable group of innovators in the second half of life who really tell a very different story about what this period of life can be about. And I could, go on and tell you about various other people. Gary Maxworthy here in California, whose wife passed away in his late 50s. He'd wanted to go into the Peace Corps when he was younger, right out of college. He already had a family. He put that on hold. Worked in the food distribution business for almost 4 decades. And after this tragedy hit him, he decided he was going to reevaluate his life. And he didn't go into the Peace Corps because he couldn't go abroad at that point, joined Vista. They sent him to the food bank in San Francisco, which was really a smart move, because he discovered when he got to the food bank that all throughout California, food banks were giving out at that point processed and canned food because they couldn't figure out ways to get fresh food to people. And he already knew from his previous career that growers throughout the state were throwing out an enormous amount of food because it was blemished. It wasn't considered supermarket or restaurant quality. And so how do you, bring 2 and 2 together? That was the big challenge that he faced. And it turns out that 2 and 2 doesn't always equal 4, because when Gary Maxworthy got done creating the Farm to Family program last year, because he knew how to do things at scale, the Farm to Family program in California alone distributed 100 million pounds of fresh produce to food banks in California. Now, if he had gone into the Peace Corps when he was 22 years old, there's no question he could have, lent a couple of helping hands and, probably would have done some things differently in his working life. But 100 million pounds of food in California is a lot of good. And, Gary came from a professional background in the Bay Area where I live. Another of the Purpose Prize winners, Catalino Tapia, was a gardener. He is an illegal immigrant, came to the country with $6 in his pocket, worked hard, started a small business. He and his wife sent their son first to UCLA, and then he graduated from law school at Berkeley. And Catalino was so proud at his son's graduation and sort of bursting with a sense of gratitude that he decided to organize other gardeners in the Bay Area to create a foundation, the Bay Area Gardeners Foundation, which has raised scholarship funds and enabled hundreds of mostly Latino youth, many of them children of gardeners, to go off and have those same kind of opportunities at the American dream. And so, in the years that I've been exposed to the Purpose Prize, we've been working on it for 5 years at Civic Ventures, we've had 6,000 nominations. We originally were going to have 5 prizes because, older people, creative, that's for young people, and then people at this stage, if things work out, they're wise. Well, we had to scramble from the first year and create 10 additional prizes and 50 fellowships. There were, I think, 3 or 4 MacArthur Genius Award winners in the fellows, who hadn't made it into the first group, just to honor 5% of the people like Inez Killingsworth, who were taking this period that, many would consider the leftover years and really making a monument of it. And I think, in these 2 stories, the shock of gray on the one hand, and Inez Killingsworth's tale, the tale of the Purpose Prize winners, you could think of it as just a, positive view versus a pessimistic view, negative aging versus positive aging. But I think that the more affirmative tale